Bonjour, bienvenue à Radio Renard. Je suis avec notre invité Andrew Semotiuk. Bonjour Andrew, merci d'être présent avec
merci
nous.
Merci beaucoup.
Andrew et moi et Vincent, on s'est rencontrés à l'école des entrepreneurs. On était dans la même classe parce qu'on a été acceptés dans un programme pour l'année. Et on a appris sur les projets l'un de l'autre. Puis pendant une pause café, on a commencé à parler de plantes. Puis moi, je parlais de mouvement avec Renard. Puis on s'est rendu compte en fait qu'il y a qu'il peut y avoir un lien entre les deux. Sur comment aménager un espace avec des éléments naturels qui peut stimuler le mouvement dans nos vies. Puis ça nous a amené à collaborer. Andrew a écrit un super article humoristique sur comment, je l'ai traduit par comment pimper sa barre à pull-ups, inspiré de ton expérience de la jungle. Fait qu'on pourrait y revenir, donner des exemples. Puis là, on s'est rendu compte qu'on avait vraiment des bonnes valeurs communes sur l'importance de connecter avec la nature. Aussi le fait que, par exemple, le jardinage, ça fait bouger. Fait que c'est toutes des discussions qu'on a eues. Puis finalement, je t'ai même invité, t'es venu donner un atelier à mon appart avec une autre de nos amies où tu nous donnais un cours de base sur le jardinage urbain pour nous aider à installer nos jardins à la maison. Donc, tout ça s'est déroulé. Puis là, je me suis dit, OK, il est temps qu'on ait une discussion au podcast pour parler plus en détail de toute ton expertise. Et aujourd'hui, pour la première fois, vous allez entendre mon accent anglais québécois parce qu'on va parler en anglais. Andrew a grandi à Saskatchewan et est d'origine ukrainienne et sa femme est mexicaine. Fait qu'il parle plusieurs langues. Il comprend très bien le français, il parle français, mais c'est plus facile en anglais. Fait qu'on on va choisir l'anglais. So hi Andrew.
Hello.
So I kind of said you were Ukrainian, and I think there's a whole story that people would like to know, like where you're from and what brought you to your specialty, which I didn't say yet, which is Ethnobotanique, and that's something I didn't know before. So yeah, where are you from and what brought you to the university doing a PhD in Ethnobotanique?
Okay, yes, well, thank you for having me, Marie-Claude. And so, as she mentioned, with a Ukrainian heritage, I was born in Alberta, then we moved to Saskatchewan. But for studies in university, I studied in Washington and later California, where I did my research in ethnobotany in the desert in Mexico, the Sonoran Desert. So in northwestern Mexico. So I kind of had like a trajectory, like a fish hook going from the prairies in Canada to the northern U.S., to the southern U.S., looped down to Guatemala for a year, Guatemala and Belize.
Doing voluntary work, right?
Yes, to volunteer at an orphanage, where every 3 months I did a research expedition in Belize, in the rainforest. And then looped back up to do my PhD at the University of California, Riverside, where I studied ethnobotany with Ezequiel Escura, my mentor there, where we researched in the Sonoran Desert. And just north of the Sonoran Desert, called the Thorn Scrub. Oh my goodness, I messed up. Just south of the Sonoran Desert, called the Thorn Scrub.
It's okay, don't worry.
Not used to interviews.
It's okay. It's a place to have a natural discussion here, so we don't have to be perfect. And then in Mexico, you met your wife.
Yeah, I actually met her online, and she was near my field site, which I was able to adjust my field site a little bit. So that actually worked out quite well, since, of course, we met before we were married, and then we got to know each other and got married.
And then you're in Montreal, and you started your own venture to help people know more about gardening and build their own garden. I think you want to kind of empower people to do it themselves, right?
Yeah, so speaking of ventures, lots of people think, okay, academic work is school, it stays there. But growing up on a farm, I always saw the link between taking some sort of product to market, right? And I had the opportunity once, since I saw posted on a board just a printed out email, like sent to the department for a week-long entrepreneurship academy at UC Davis. And so I applied and got accepted, and it was great. We stayed there for a week, everything really included. And it kind of opened my eyes to entrepreneurship. It was called the Food and Health Entrepreneurship Academy.
Oh, that's awesome.
So how to take an idea and package it so that it's actually useful for people. And yeah, it's things very similar to what we cover in the...
And it kind of started your reflection about maybe I could start my own project. Is that where it started?
Yeah. And so maybe I could, maybe it's possible, and maybe more than just an idea. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
and
it can
then,
become a reality.
And then at the moment it became a reality because you have your project which is called, and I love the name, it's called Botanical Instinct.
Yes.
So l'instinct botanique.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the services you provide with your company now?
Okay, so right now, consulting. So for helping people, if they have their own idea for especially a small space, like urban apartments, for example, to make it a reality for example, producing vegetables indoors or in a small space on a balcony. And also design with botany some concepts. So, for example, if people have an unused high ceiling or a place on the wall, what type of vegetation will cause the effect that they want for themselves and their guests? So really designing gardens and agriculture in small urban spaces.
I think it's what connected with me. It was, you were not just focused on the plants, telling me what type of plants should I buy and how to take care of them. You kind of had this broad view of how to build a garden in your space that would be beneficial both for the plants and the humans that are in that space, right?
Yeah, because so many people think, okay, plants, I like plants. And you can have one plant, you can have many plants, until possibly you're like this crazy plant person that waters plants for 3.5 hours a day and everywhere, right? So, but you must ask, why do people like plants, right? And if you think, throughout most of human history, we've lived around plants. Mm-hmm. It is our dwelling place, right? So you go, you might have a spot where you sleep, but outside all day you're surrounded by vegetation. And so the vegetation, the shapes, the colors, the figures, the movement, really cues our instincts, hence botanical instinct, and our feelings for how to respond. Where would we find water, food? Where do we feel comfortable? Where is it a good place to relax? So if we use those same principles in our apartments, pretty soon we're not the crazy plant person, but we have a beautiful space that produces vegetables, herbs, flavors, right? Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Nature was our home before.
Yeah.
We lived surrounded by nature. It wasn't separate from us. And I realized that most people, I had a few plants in my apartment and they didn't do so well, but I didn't know how to properly take care of them, but they were very robust plants that couldn't die. So they kind of survived the whole way. But they was just, I treated them as decoration, you put it somewhere where it's cute. And then I kind of realized that I need to take care of the plant and put it where it needs to be to grow fully. And I also realized that plants are not only there to decorate and be pretty, they can completely change the mood of an apartment, and they don't have to be stuck in a corner. You we can't play with that. And that's what I like again about your approach is thinking about the design of a space, including plants, and also adding your special touch, which is we can grow food indoors. And I kind of then something switched in my head. I started thinking, maybe I won't just have a garden in the summer on my balcony. How can I grow some food even inside during the winter time, for example?
Yeah.
So far we haven't talked actually about what is ethnobotany. So we'll go back to that.
Yes.
the basics. So, what is ethnobotany? Your specialty.
So, ethnobotany really means plants and people. So ethno means people and botany means plants. So it's the study of how people use or interact with plants. That can open a big, wide area of study. Most people might instantly think of medicinal plants like in the rainforest, or poison darts or something like that. So, but there's much more. So you have medicinal plants, you have edible plants like agriculture, you have plants for design, right? And especially domesticating plants. So how people historically brought plants close to their home, and that's where we get like all of our vegetables for today. People interacting with wild plants that we now have domesticated versions. And so it's really a big field. And for what I'm doing with Ethnobotany for this project is really urban ethnobotany, which is kind of an oxymoron because people think, wait, ethnobotany, shouldn't it be in the Amazon rainforest? And sure, yeah, that's great. But also, why not in an urban setting? You know, why shouldn't we have, especially children, learning, playing, eating nutritious plants that they grow themselves?
That's a nice switch. I think that also happened in my mind. I always saw nature as this huge kind of land that you have to protect, and you take your car and you go camping, like, and it's the wilderness. We talked about like the myth of the wilderness. And I started realizing that I was kind of craving nature in an urban setting, and I don't have a car, so it's not very accessible all the time. So I kind of thought, how can I bring nature to me and surround myself with nature, even in a small space? And it kind of started, once you have a plant, you want to one more animal. You become this crazy plant lady. I call myself the crazy plant lady because me and my sisters and my family, we kind of all started to have kind of we were very interested in plants, and we can always share photos, and it's like our babies, and you kind of never want to stop. And each year I kind of want to add a layer in my space of green stuff, any kind of green stuff. So I like this aspect of urban, and your reflection about what it brings to children as well to garden. Like, so what did you notice of the benefits of gardening for people?
Well, first of all, speaking of children, if you take a plate, this is how like 99% of people like try to feed some sort of vegetation, botany, vegetables to children. Take a plate, eat it, right? It's like, oh my goodness. Yeah. And it always turns into a fight because the vegetables came out of plastic package, which instantly means low value to most people. There's no story behind it. There's no effort. But if a child, even a 2 and 4 year old, you know, I'm speaking from my own experience, they see a plant growing, they have fun spraying water on it with a little squirt bottle, and then they take little plastic scissors and cut off some leaves, and you know, they eat half of it before they even bring it to the kitchen, right? And even if sometimes, you know, lettuce can get bitter or something, they eat some, then they don't eat some other, then the next time they clip it, they eat it again. You know, it creates this interaction where they're getting used to healthy food without sweet sauces and all other stuff to dump on top of it to try to entice kids to eat something. So it really makes it a game, helps them learn about the cycle of life, and causes them to move, which is something that you've studied quite a lot, and you're very aware of the deficit in society of movement.
Exactly.
And implementing these just movement into normal life where you don't even know you're moving. Exactly. And then all of a sudden, people are more fit than they otherwise would be.
Yeah, we talk about children, but it's good for adults too, to kind of to understand where food comes from. And once you take care of a plant and you see the food grow, like, it's so precious. Like, it's such a nice experience to go to your garden every day, and you kind of I'm always mesmerized by like how things go sometimes so fast, and it's just a fun experience day by day by day. And when it's time to eat it, we're way less picky than when we go to the market and we're looking for perfectly shaped stuff, you know. It's like you said, the history behind the food is so important, and the meal becomes much more enjoyable.
Yeah, and I noticed just in my personal observation, children have more of a game when growing food. And then as they transfer to adults, they start taking pride in the food. Like, I grew this, you know, kind of. So there's kind of that transition, but both are perfectly healthy and a benefit to people.
And about movement, so I have plants. I have a classic Montreal apartment. So I have 2 balconies, and plants are spread out everywhere. And I have to water them some almost every day. And I voluntarily don't buy a huge bucket of water because I want to fill my cup, walk all the way to one corner, come back and fill it, and walk to the other corner. Okay, and nice. It's kind of a meditation. And before we started recording, you kind of talk about like it becomes a ritual to take care of your plants, and it's a good way to start the day. So I don't know if you want to talk about that aspect.
Yeah. Well, let's think about how lots of people start their day nowadays. Okay, you open your eyes, you wake up, and maybe you start checking your email, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. You know, by the time you're listening to this video, it'll be some other social network. But that's really a reactive way to start your day, not centered. What does everybody else want me to do, right? But if you start your day where you are actively caring for something else that is alive, it's really centering. You have to observe, you know, you're in tune to the plant. You're now moving your body, you're thinking about how you yourself feel. And especially watering or some other devices like the bucket farm that I designed for people who don't have time to water, you know, you kind of hear the water trickling. It's like, it's very centering where you can then launch into your day as opposed to being determined by a whole bunch of people you might not even know that are sending you emails.
I think that watching our phone or a screen, it kind of started it's like running on a fast track. Like it kind of speed up your day, and you're always kind of nervous and seeing what's happening in the world. But like no phones in the morning, no screens, just kind of walking around and looking at the plants, make sure they're good, that there are no bugs or stuff. It's really calming, and it's for people who I don't meditate like sitting all the time, but I try to do it like actively while taking care of the plants, and it's very, very beneficial on many levels.
And it doesn't take that long of time, you know, that much time, I should say. It's not like going to eat an hour out of your day. So it's quite good.
It's a few minutes, and we even started talking to the plants. We kind of say bye when we leave, and I think it's a question that Maud, my friend at the workshop, asked you. It's like, Andrew, she was kind of nervous. Is it good if I sing or talk to my plants? Like, does it help them? And do you remember what was your answer?
Yeah, so there's a saying that everybody says it's craziness to talk to your plants. But every gardener knows it's true, right? So go for it. We don't need to make any official stances on talking to plants, but there's quite a bit of research on vibration, music for grapes, the sound of corn kernels opening and sprouting, being played back to other corn kernels.
And they realize that the corn kernels, they grow faster.
And but that's research with measurable results, and then some people will have all kinds of other conclusions, but this is not the space for those conclusions. But I just say go for it.
Exactly. We don't need scientific proof. The fact just doing it is enjoyable. It kind of becomes fun. And so how do you what was the topic of your research? Actually, I think it's a question I never asked you. What were you studying for your PhD?
So, before the PhD, I worked with a medicine man in Belize. They call him a bush doctor. And then during the PhD, I worked with a group of indigenous Yoreme in northern Mexico. There, they use the word indigenous.
Okay.
Here we say First Nations, the United States, Native Americans. The term changes, but they self-identify as indigenous, and the name of their tribe, as they call it, is the Yoreme tribe. And they had various projects, all centered around using plants, medicinal plant gardens, medicinal plant pharmacies, and really spreading the culture of language and use of plants within their community. So that's the group I studied, and then I looked at some of the ecological consequences and kind of the battle between these groups of Yoreme that would, for example, harvest these cactus fruits that grow on this, it's called pitaya dulce, sweet pitaya from northern Mexico. And it's a cactus fruit that grows on these long-term growth cactus forests, for example. And then people will chop them down to grow irrigated garbanzo or wheat, and then run out of irrigation water because in the thorn scrub close to the Sonoran Desert, there's not much water. And so you have this really short-term investment versus a long growth cactus forest that produces fruit like an orchard that can be harvested from the wild. So there's this battle between producing things from natural ecology versus industrial agriculture. Because it goes back to the idea you were talking about before. An investor will say, well, there's nothing there, nobody there. But it's kind of a myth from the colonial era where that nature's empty, there's nothing there, there's no people there. Yeah, the wilderness myth. Gomez Pompa and Kaus published a landmark paper called Taming the Wilderness Myth. This myth that nobody's in the wilderness. Well, it's somebody's home. I remember my friend Panchita there in Sonora told me as we were looking out over this like wilderness, right? And from a view from up on the highway, it just looks like thorn scrub, okay? So like low-lying forest. But she's like, there's people there. They live there. There's homes, there's families. So it's really, it's a myth that with a little bit of experience vanishes quite fast.
I think with all the ecological movement and the reflection about the impact of human on nature, we kind of we're disconnected from nature. We kind of see like this nature as a wilderness, wild space, and we see humans as invaders. But the truth is that we grew from nature. We were like, it was our home once again. And I know that I don't feel good when I position myself as an invader because I'm losing my roots, and I kind of see only my human side as the destructor of nature, right? And it's kind of complex to say, okay, well, how can I exist in this world? Not only respecting nature, but kind of improving it, because for me, biological agriculture is still a monoculture where you kind of cut everything and you put something else, like you say, and you can destroy very nice piece of lands and forests that are very diverse with like the species they welcome. So maybe that's why I kind of want to make a difference by starting with my own apartment. Like, what can I do in this small space just to kind of bring more nature into this world? Like, it's for me the first step.
Yeah.
What brought you to discover like ethnobotany? Like, do you remember the moment you kind of discovered this domain?
Yeah, interesting. So, I grew up growing little, patches of gardens on the farm, on the sides. But then if you want a kind of long story, I'll kind of condense it.
Yeah.
I think I was 11 or something, 10 or 11. And I got sick, the flu, bad cold or something. And I was just like leafing through this herbal book that was like in our house. And I thought nothing of it. But then later, I was at the library looking for a book, and I was in the wrong aisle. And I found these like wild plant books. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's like the herbal book I was leafing through before. And I realized, all these things that I thought were weeds were completely edible. So I went around harvesting wild edible plants, but to my dismay, I quickly found out that neighbors would help me or us or the community, I don't know who they were helping, by spraying them with like Roundup and these chemicals. And I'm like, man, that's like, I was waiting for that plant to grow big to harvest it, dandelions, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. This idea that there are bad herbs and good herbs. And
it's so disappointing when you're waiting for your chickweed or whatever to like grow big, and then somebody comes around and sprays it, and there's just a circle of brown.
And the intention is good, like you said, they don't want that to invade
people. Yeah.
How old were you at the time?
Oh, let's see, 11, and then when I found the other book, probably early teen. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it kind of started like
14, 15. Yeah.
A train of thoughts in your head.
And then of course later on I studied in university and just really kept. I didn't have a route to just study ethnobotany because it's not a classical field like biology or even botany. But every chance I had to get a little bit closer, I kept taking it and finally got there. So if you're wondering if there's something you really want to do and you just keep taking micro steps towards it, well, one day you'll get there.
And do you have other... so you were 11 and kind of started your research and your learning about botany, and then you moved to ethnobotany. Do you remember other key moments in your life where you had aha moments that kind of shift your own perception of nature?
Perception of nature. Interesting. Well, yeah, you have the perception from a weed versus a very useful plant. And I think that... that's a good question. I have to think about it. But really, that's a big change. And then also kind of probably the most would be this idea that plants are just like factories to produce things versus plants are alive. They're part of the ecosystem. We always say they're part of the ecosystem. Well, no, they're alive. They actually use us to their advantage. They can survive perfectly fine without us, but we need them. So it's really this idea of like who's in charge, really. And that's been published by various authors talking about how, corn manipulates humans to have it planted in nice little beds and things like that. So that's a real paradigm shift along with realizing that what we were talking about before, like Maud's question about talking to plants, that really taking plants out of this idea that they're just a factory to do a job for me, a living being, especially working with people from various cultures, it's really eye-opening.
And to jump on the example you said about corn, we're gonna. I think it's fun to talk about that because that's something that opened my eyes too. So we kind of have this vision collectively. Maybe I don't know if it's only in North America, but that like humans are invaders of nature and we're destroying it, which is true. Like industrial production is very bad for the environment in some ways. And then realizing that, like you said, plants, they also have ways to propagate and they kind of use humans to their advantage. And you were talking about corn, and I was watching a documentary about, I think, agriculture, modern agriculture. And the ending was kind of super funny and nice. They say, like, we think we're using them.
Yeah.
But imagine the victory that it is for a species to be the most valued and cultivated species in the world. And like you said, we grow them, we put them in comfort beds, and we want to do everything so they grow them like in the most perfectly kind of way. And it made me think that it's not only a domination by us over nature, like it's an interaction, and in some ways they won.
Yeah.
So I thought it made me laugh, but again, it made me rethink the relationship we have. And it's a good point that you bring, not to look only for plant for it benefits for us. Like, does it like purify the air? Can I eat it? Like, it's very like a production performance mode, right? And kind of just bringing different plants and seeing them as just living things that are valuable in many different ways, and not only for our own profit all the time, right? So very interesting. And then if we talk about more specifically indoor gardening, like your other specialty, so you studied the relation of nature and human, but also you're interested by very concrete ways to have a garden in a urban setting. And you talked earlier about your bucket farm. So I don't know if it's kind of an experiment you're doing right now.
Well, I can talk about the concept. So the overall concept is to produce vegetables that both help our quality of life and help get other types of species indoors. So, for example, say somebody wants vegetable production in their apartment, or a vegetable production or some other plants that look nice for some sort of design principle. We talked about that a little bit before. But then the species that they have, especially for vegetables, have all been domesticated outdoors in full sunlight. Indoor plants are mainly from tropical or like jungle style environments that are used to low light. So light is the real limiting factor there. But let's say somebody wants vegetable production. Nowadays, we have lots of types of, for example, LED lights. They're one of the most cost effective right now for grow lights. But most of the industry has developed technology for growing indoors for mainly one species, cannabis, right? Which you have to force to grow indoors. But if
you're hiding, is that the point?
If people are places where it's illegal, they're growing it indoors for like hiding it, you know.
They become very smart.
And there's tents and things like that. So there's lots of technology for that. The same thing with vegetable production in vertical farms, right? Technology, right? Lots of technological answers. But let's think about how plants were domesticated. You have a wild plant, wild types of lettuce, and you're eating it. And then either you take the seeds and plant them by your home, or some seeds fall as you're bringing some lettuce close to your home and it starts growing around your home. Okay, now we call it a garden. And as we select the type of lettuce that we like, with big leaves or round or however, then it becomes a domesticated variety of lettuce, all grown outside in full sunlight. But now people, like me, want a garden inside. So we can use lots of grow lights, which is nice, works well. But what I really want to do is open up the varieties and number of species that we can grow inside. For example, there's so many wild edible plants that would be good candidates to start domesticating for indoor use, and really get that movement going. But it takes people that are doing it, right? And maybe they just haven't even thought of the opportunity. Even in the vertical farms that are on large scale, there's a lack of seeds that are known to perform well in an indoor setting. Because we're really at an inflection point, which means like a rising part on the curve of indoor agriculture.
I think it's coming. Like I heard
Yeah.
millennials are crazy about plants, and if we think about plants the same way we think about food, I think right now we think a lot about where does food come from, and we kind of go back in the supply chain, and we want to make sure that the food is made in a fair trade, organic way, and preferably local. And then I started having this thought about where does my plant come from, and I did realize that all my plants are tropical plants. Like you said, that normally in the jungle they grow under like bigger trees and plants, so they don't need a lot of light, so it's perfect for apartments. And then I went to the market this year to buy more stuff for my garden, and I kind of realized that it can go up to a few $100s if you really want a big garden, buying stuff that are not perennial and that are not necessarily even from Quebec.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, well, what can I buy that is perennial, that I won't have to pay again year after year, and what is actually from Quebec that I would enjoy. And then, like you said, some ideas, they come to you and you wonder why you have never thought of it. Like there's an article from La Presse this week that was about like what can you grow in an urban in the city, like fruits you can grow in the city. And the first one was blueberries, and it was like, what is that? Like why do I pay to go with my car in a big field to grab it, like pick it like
pick blueberries,
and then I never thought that if it grows there, it could grow like a few kilometers away from there in my apartment, like on my balcony, you know. So do you have other examples of plants like this that like you target and think, oh, maybe it would be a good candidate to bring it?
Yeah, well, really anything, we talked some about this, it's determined by light. So anything with a seed or a fruit, you'll need like a balcony without other balconies shading you out, right? With minimal light, leafy greens do very well. Any type of leafy greens. Wild edibles, domesticated, things like that. So that's really the trend you want to look at. How much light do I have? And then how many leafy, can I grow fruit, stalks like celery, or just leafy greens, or potentially roots with lots of light once again. And that's one thing in the Facebook learning group that we have, Botanical Instinct Mastermind, which you are part of.
So after the workshop, you kind of invite people to this Facebook group, which is, can you repeat it? Like,
Botanical Instinct Mastermind group. Yeah, a Facebook learning group. So we have a table with how much light you have, and then what type of crop would grow well for that environment. And that's what I really want to spur in people, is to start experimenting. And that's why I made like a bucket farm we talked about. Because there's so many gizmos, you know, do this, and then, oh, by the way, buy my supply of these plugs to plant in. But the concept that people need is low input farming, right? Low cost input. You know, you have to buy this big pot, and then you have to buy this soil, or you have this hydroponic thing against the wall, and all these inputs, these costs. So I just wanted to make something really low input, modular, takes up like hardly any space on your floor because people have small apartments, and start growing, start experimenting, right? Without the need for extra supplies. You find some seeds, you can do an easy germination test, figure out, okay, because wild seeds germinate a lot less than store-bought or domesticated ones. Half my seeds germinate, so I'll put a few extra in, you plant it, and off you go. You're breeding plants, right? Children can do it. So that's really what we want to get going.
Yeah, I think the tendency, like there's a movement going there. It's not there yet, but you want to be part of the experimentation to bring new ideas and testing. And I really enjoyed this learning group because I feel like I don't have to be an expert. I just have to share my what I'm trying from home, and it's like beta testers, like
early adopters, beta testers,
exactly. And what you said about the seeds, like going back to the supply chain or of the plant, like I started thinking, I could buy my own plants, and then you realize that you can propagate them or plant them yourself, like the seeds, and that's another level, I think, of learning. But it's still very entertaining and fun to realize I feel dumb saying I kind of realized that plants come from somewhere and they grow on their own. And it's kind of magical just seeing it coming out from the soil, and you're like, what was I thinking all my life? Like you say, we receive stuff in the plastic packaging, and we kind of forget how does food grow, and realizing that we have the power to make our own food.
It's I can think of so many examples. I remember so many things.
And so I want to open the discussion about like your next project, and I think we want to be involved in that, is which wild plants from maybe Quebec can we bring in? Do you already have a list of plants that you're experimenting with?
So me personally, I'm started experimenting this year, since the project started this year, with really standard like wild edible plants and seeds from various places in Canada here. You have your chickweed, your dandelions, your chenopodium, amaranths, and just want to get a good baseline for which ones perform well under LED lighting, indoors. It's not always as you expect. And then move on to more of the local plants, which will include like teas. Like lots of wild plants people might not eat as a vegetable, but they often make tea out of it. And that really kind of expands the flavor palette of... Actually, you didn't bring it up yet, but as we discussed, gourmet gardening, right? Planting to a flavor, to a recipe. So your salad now has a mix of predefined intentional flavors that you planted in there, as opposed to lettuce with red lettuce,
It made me think, have you read the stuff from Dan Barber? Do you know this chef? He's a chef that is doing farm to table.
Here,
I think he's in New York. I think he's in the States. He's in the States, but I think it's in New York. So it's farm to table, and he also has his restaurant is, I think it's called Blue Farm or something. It's the name of his farm that he has, and you would love him because he's very experimenting with growing stuff, but he doesn't grow food so it only looks good. He grows food so it would taste. Which is it kind of something click in my head that we grow food right now so they're big, but we don't care about are they filled with nutrients and do they taste great, and you can optimize a food so it tastes like just delicious.
And there's a big movement for that. Janos Wilder in Tucson uses vegetables from the Children's Museum garden, and lots of restaurants have latched on to really this great trend, but it hasn't really entered people's daily life yet in their kitchen.
Exactly.
Right? So we want to kind of democratize that so people can experiment and have these bursts of flavors from their own urban setting.
It's thinking about plants for the sensory input for the human. Like I realize it's like we talk about how gardening brings movement, but being in contact with nature brings a lot of very enjoyable sensory experiences. Just smelling the plants, the flowers, the herbs, touching the soil is very enjoyable. And I was kind of, how do you call it, disdainous? Like I had a disdain for, like we have this perception that the soil is dirty.
Well, dirt is very dirty.
Exactly. Dirt is dirty. But actually it's just, again, it's natural, and we evolved to be to touch the soil and barefoot and with our hands, and it's just very enjoyable. But like thinking about the sensory experience. I don't know if that's how you call it. When you design a space is also something I learned from you. Like the idea that if you build a very Pinteresty kind of bar on your balcony, it's very popular right now. It's like you kind of have the section to kind of drink wine on your balcony, and you stand still. And you made me think that instead of putting, for example, like a normal plant, you can put some basil. So when you're there every day, you kind of smell the basil, and you're inclined to use it also for your meals, right?
Yeah, and the concept of grazing. So you can have one plant that you have to wait 3 months and it produces a couple strawberries, for example. Or you can have a mint, a lemon balm that you pick, you smell, you chew on, you squish it into whatever you're drinking, lemonade or something. And you have this consistent, just flavor experience. So working those flavors into your Pinterest designs is really important. And that's why I really like to do what we call critique club. We put up pictures people post of their garden projects, and we give commendations and recommendations. What are the strong points and the weak points, and really analyze, okay, does that work? Maybe it would take you all summer to build that massive planter box. Maybe you should just start growing some plants. You know what I mean? How can you get flavors in there? Well, how you could probably fit more plants vertically here and the sun's there. So really looking at all these things.
Yeah, the critique club, I don't know if that's how it came, but I think people, they come to you and they see a picture from Pinterest and they say, I want that, it's so pretty, but we don't realize the amount of work it takes, what it costs, and if it's good or not for the plants, and if they will grow properly. So you kind of have this deconstruct this ideal that the person wants from Pinterest, and actually you make me realize there's actually a how do you call it? There's food porn, and I think there will be plant porn, or garden porn.
Well, and peer pressure. I remember my friend Sean. He was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna build this raised planter box." I was like, okay, cool, but why? Because it will be better for my plants. And I'm like, well, but you live in the American Southwest. Like, all the traditional gardens were sunken beds, so you use less water, it stays humid, it's cooler, the plants don't overheat and shrivel. He's like, oh no, but it's gonna be better. He's telling me. Finally, I'm like, your wife saw that on Pinterest and you need to make it for her, right? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, you can borrow my hammer. It's like you saw it on Pinterest, you gotta make it, but you gotta think, what is best for the plant? What's the best environment?
Exactly, because you can build it, you can put like fresh plants in it, but over time, if it's not good for them, they're gonna die, and
or not produce, and you're gonna be battling and watering.
Exactly. So just thinking in what's the best environment for that plant, and kind of creating that, and also how do you design a space that makes you feel good. Which is part of the critique club that I love. Like, we looked at pictures of interior designs, and we kind of reflected on, would I feel good in that space, and how would I move in that space? And you had great ideas about how to kind of stack or where to put things to create a nice path to follow, or to create a great trajectory for the eyes also.
Yeah. So that's one big thing. You have to think, okay, what holds people's vision? We all have a cone of vision, 30 degrees down. That's what it's called. And from nature, what are the things that we look past, and what are the things that we lock onto? Colors, movement. And you can input that into your space to, really, it's kind of diabolical, but you're controlling where people look, where their attention goes when they enter your home, your business, whatever.
So if you put a big red flower like pot up high, like, the natural tendency will be, we're going to start looking there because it attracts.
Well, that brings up a good point. You can bring people there, or you can hide things. So if you have something that would capture the vision, you have to have something leading up to it, if it's above their or outside of their cone of vision. So that's how people will either camouflage and hide things, or cause the group to change their focus to a certain area.
And going back to movement, like the movements of our eyes are super important, and nature brings that. Also, you're stimulated, and there's studies are starting about the fact that we're always looking at the screens for a very short distance, and we don't move that much, and kind of looking around is very good also, I'm sure, for our eyes and mental health in general, just watching stuff in different distance. And I think it was one of our first discussion, what you said about where we're looking in life. Like normally we look down, and I think it's natural because I guess we would be looking for some things to eat and the obstacles on the way and the dangerous stuff. And then I was talking, and you started talking how to, like I said in the introduction, how to kind of enhance your experience of fitness indoor. And you thought of ways to improve the pull-up bars, which we all have somewhere in the apartment, like in the home, in the door frame, and sometimes it's just accumulating dust, and we don't use it. And your statement is maybe it's because it's boring. So how could we make it more natural or green so it becomes more fun? So I don't know if you want to talk also like about that, like your experience in the jungle, for example.
Oh, sure. Well, that's why we have our slogan, Feel the Botany, is because like we're talking about fitness, right? So everybody goes to the gym, they're like staring at a concrete gray wall, trying to do their pull-ups. Oh, motivate, just gotta push out the pull-ups, like the push, forcing yourself. But like you mentioned the jungle in Guatemala, Belize, at the rainforest, the desert, any natural environment, you start moving your body without even realizing it's exercise. Right? Climbing jungle vines, swinging, you see monkeys doing that, and all of a sudden you're exercising and you don't even feel the strain, right? Because your mind's in a different place. You're not focusing on how tired you are, looking at something boring, or even though you might have workout music in your ear. It's a whole different mindset. That's how you get those stories of those people that were either stranded on islands or isolated in the remote, latest the story of Russian wilderness, and they'll go hunting until the animal is exhausted, and their endurance is just like beyond imagination, right? But they're not running to exercise. They're not trying to break a sweat. They don't have a step counter. They have a vision, a dream, a need, right? And then they have a story afterwards. And it really pushes people past their own mental limitations. So we want to create that type of environment where you do have fitness in a way that you're stimulated to naturally be fit.
And I think the reflection on that is starting right now. We have this vision that physical activity takes place in a gym, and maybe you go jogging outside or on the treadmill, right? And then we see emerge like trek fits in installation in parks, for example, where they put different types of bar, which is and very good improvement. And then you made me realize that like one step further would be, well, if we can train in nature, but it's sometimes hard in an urban area. But again, if I cannot go to nature, how can I bring nature in my home to make it more enjoyable? So you were telling me that which type of plants could I put that would kind of fall down from, if I put it on a high shelf, which type of plants would be good that would fall down, and some other plants could climb up and...
Yeah, to make the environment. So you have to, some plants will have the vines you can climb up or fall down, and you can, depending on where you want to focus, you can put different colors or plants that move if you have some wind in there, so that it makes your micro environment, right? So to put you in the right mindset.
So it's a project of ours. I took a photo of after, before, which is like I said, a classic pull-up bar. And then I'll be putting a shelf, and then we need to go to the store to put that up, but I keep the people posted. I do the before after and see
That's
if I
excellent.
use my bar more. But the idea you gave us is like when you were talking when you were in the jungle and you were kind of trying to climb on the vines like the monkeys are doing.
Yeah.
And I thought, why don't we put kind of a cord? How do you call it?
Like a vine.
A vine.
Yeah.
Indoor, like
a rope. Yeah, like a climbing rope. Yeah.
So these are the ideas that I kind of started working on. So
Yeah, rope is great.
maybe I have the how do you call it? A vine that twists around things.
Yeah, like a vine curling on the rope. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll try. We'll see. We'll do the testing and I'll share it in the mastermind group.
Excellent.
For sure. So we talk about the knowledge you have and how you wanted to share it with people. But when you have questions and you want to learn more about how to improve your own environment, where do you look? Where do you get that information?
Source for information. Critiquing pictures is great to not just look at pictures, but actively critique them. Experimenting. Groups, seeing what worked for other people. The value of experience is great. And then it's nice to have numbers, data, did this work or not? But on a small scale, an experience and sharing those experiences is really great. There's lots of books. For example, we're talking about potential species to grow inside. There's lots of books and databases about edible plants, and then using those as candidates and experimenting.
But in your case, where do you go to? Like, do you have favorite websites or experts that you kind of follow on social media to kind of stay fresh in your field? People. Well, currently there's like Farmer Tyler is a YouTube personality. Farmer Tyler?
That's how he goes, Farmer Tyler.
Okay.
And he does lots of reviews on technical things, light intensity that's needed, growing in greenhouses, things like that. David Robinson, known as the plant sage.
Okay.
And he has these maxims, maxim of the plant sage.
Okay.
He wrote a classic book about growing indoors, with good details on soil, harvesting, plant health, things like that, setting the groundwork. For other aspects like inspiration, Yule Gibbons. So this is an old book, but he really was one of the, how would you say it? But at least popular. You can't say he started harvesting wild edibles because people have done that for eons, but he really popularized harvesting wild edibles with his book, Stalking the Wild Asparagus.
Okay.
And his stories about collecting asparagus in the springtime and various wild edible plants. We could go on. Tom Brown Jr. Really, he connects a story into learning about nature and plants. So anything you learn from a field guide, which is like a picture with a list of facts. What do you remember? 4% on a good day? Tom Brown Jr. stuff, you keep peeling back the onion with lesson after lesson for your life. You read it once, you remember it forever because it's like a story that you've applied to your life. Very excellent teacher. Hands down the best wilderness survivalist known. And so that really inspires for involving story with plants in the garden, in the home.
It's not about all the technical details. Like, I think it's...
No, and there's a big push. Go on Kickstarter, online. Everybody's pushing the tech, right? So I want to bring the botany back into urban botany. The plants, the experience, the story. And that's why I wanted something, instead of like a device that you install, you buy material, you plug it in, instant. Are people really going to save money? Maybe, hopefully, but something modular that people, teens can experiment with. It really gives them an experience.
Yeah.
And
I just jump quickly on the tech aspect. I saw recently an invention was a tech device that you put, I think, in the pot, and it's connected to your smartphone, and it tells you, like, the plant is talking to you. And at first you're kind of impressed. You're like, oh wow, that's like gadgets are impressive, and it makes me think of a Tamagotchi that you kind of. But then I realized that the fun of taking care of the plant and the difficulty of it is decoding exactly what the plant needs. And we kind of buy plants sometimes in the same store, and we don't realize that one doesn't like heat, one doesn't like direct sun. So you kind of have, like, my plants are almost always moving around in the apartment because I'm testing what's the best environment for them. And the part of the fun of gardening and what's good for humans, I think, is this close connection to the plant and kind of seeing as a living thing that you can be in relation with. So I kind of realized I wouldn't want that invention, even though it's cool, because that's a job we can do, and it's fun learning about it.
Yeah, and exactly, getting to know the plant, its needs, different species. So even if people have whatever type of setup, a pot, hydroponic, like one of those sensors with an app that alerts you, okay, time to water, refill nutrient. Those are great as long as you can customize and do some experiments, right? If it becomes just a factory, you get a box, put it in, get an output, you lose the experience, the chance to try new things, the creativity, right? So at least just make sure you can custom. Even if you buy the box, okay, switch the seed, right? Do a switcheroo on the seed and see what happens, and have fun.
And going back to inspiration, I realized that ideas can come from absolutely anywhere. And me and Vince, when we walk outside, we always look for books, the boxes with free books inside. Like, have you seen that in the city? Like, where you can give books for free, and then you kind of go through the small boxes, and it's very enjoyable because we take always the green alleys, and there are hidden places with great books that we found. And one of them was a bonsai book.
Oh, cool.
And that Vince took. And at first, I wasn't necessarily interested in, like, taking care of a small plant to make it pretty, and over the 30 years making it pretty. It wasn't necessarily my view of like controlling nature, but then it made me realize that what would be the bonsai version in Quebec, like what type of trees could we bring inside. And I let it slide. Then I realized that maybe instead of buying a Christmas tree every year, I could start it small and grow it inside over the years. So
there you go. I had never thought of that.
And it would be so fun to, like, Christmas after Christmas, it always gets bigger. So what I have to figure out now is, what do I do with it when it's too big? Because I don't have a land to plant it on, but I'm sure I could find someone. But is there a way to kind of control it so it doesn't grow too fast? That's the type of question.
Yeah, using bonsai techniques. You might need a couple different trees in case.
That's a good idea. I was planning on buying kind of one and taking care of it, but maybe it's risky.
All your eggs in a basket, all your plants in one pot,
No. Okay.
But experience, like you're saying, you're creating that experience from nothing. I remember Patrick Van Dam, well-known ethnobotanist. He was doing some consulting for the United Nations FAO, so for food and agriculture, and he became a tomato farmer. Like, he just rented some land and planted like 20 hectares of tomatoes to know what the experience of the people that he needs to help is. And nobody made him do that. He just did it. And I mean,
it improved
that's
his
awesome.
work. Yeah.
It improved his work. It improved, his job would have been the same for him, but it improved the results for the people he was helping. So, I mean, all those small changes, people make. You never know how you're improving the experience and the stories that your family has.
And I think we have to break this idea that we can, in one click, kind of redesign our whole space and buy a technology that would give a very productive garden very quickly. I realized that going back to interior design, there's a guy that I heard at the Oprah podcast with, his name is Nate Burkus. He had a TV show of interior design, and I think it was this transformation show, like the before and the after. And I think I had this vision in my head that with clothing and design, I always had to do like big changes and start from new and always have new clothes all at the same time. And I was frustrated because I would go to the shopping mall and I would find maybe one piece and I had a new piece with an old piece and then Nate changed my mind. He said that he saw now interior design as layering, like it's built over time and with stuff that you love and it doesn't mind if it costs $5 and you buy it in a thrift shop or if it's like a very expensive piece of art. Like now he sees that anything that is meaningful to you, it's over time you build that, and eventually every pieces you have, you enjoy it and you like it. So I have, gardening is teaching me patience because I'm not a very patient person. Vince would know I'm not patient, but with nature you have to be. And you kind of started realizing that some plants grow faster than others. And talking about the cycles, if you buy only strawberries because you're crazy about strawberries, but you have one time in the summer, then all these weeks you have nothing else. So you want to mix the species. So every time you go outside, there's something new popping. Yeah. And so, that's a good point I could add. Like gardening teaches patience for my own self. But it teaches
so many things.
That the perfect garden won't be building the exact thing you see on Pinterest. It would be kind of testing and just experience it yourself. And just if you don't have plants, just start with one and see what happens, and then kind of build on that, right? And then to plug another person that really inspired me was I think, I don't know if I pronounce her name well, but it's Ilse Crawford. And she's in interior design again, that she had a TV show, an episode from the Abstract documentary series on Netflix. And she explained that her view of interior design is about how does a space make you feel, and not only about how does a space look. So she's thinking about design from a sensory experience. And one of her books was called The Sensual Home. And and I realized that all my life I kind of wanted a place that looks good, but I didn't think, how do I feel in that space? And my relation to plants is that right now. Like, how do I feel with those plants? What do they bring? The smells, the textures.
Feel the botany.
Exactly. Feel the botany. I love your slogan. You're very good with the catchy phrases. These are different ideas that people maybe could inspire people to know more, because I think that's one of our goal with the podcast, is not to like provide like all the answers and the how-tos, but just kind of to open people's minds.
And that's the origin of domesticated plants, right? Taking these wild plants and experimenting, seeing how they work. It's really the true paleo diet. You know, people are talking about paleo diets, but gardening, wild plants, and so many possibilities.
And those possibilities will be on your website and your social medias, because one of your goals is to experiment, but also acquire and build knowledge and content for people who are curious like you. Yes. So if people want to know more about your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, so on the Botanical Instinct website, so botanicalinstinct.cascus.net. We can spell it out, but I think there will be a link below.
There will be a link.
And then the French one, under development, Instinct Botanique. instinct.cascus.net.
Botanique.
And both Facebook, Instagram. So Facebook, it's facebook.com/DrewJohn101, and Instagram, Mentor Drew.
And
yeah, I think we'll have the links below.
Exactly, and people can check out your page, because I think sometimes you will do workshops, so they will be able to meet you in person, right?
Yes, in-person workshops, online, and really tell me your ideas, right? Mm-hmm. Your needs. We'll see what we can put together.
Yeah, you're a consultant, but you offer services. Like, I could come up to you and say, I would like to build this. Can you advise me on this? And you kind of
definitely
with a custom experience for the person.
Yeah, we want to encourage that. We want to encourage people to think on their own, critique what they see around them. I have an ebook probably coming out this week for really people to do their own just germination test to start planting some seeds that they grew themselves, collected, got given to them, because you see companies that guarantee the seed will germinate. Well, nature doesn't work like that. It intentionally makes some. Yeah. But so resources, and especially the masterminds. So we're looking for people that are want to be part of really online learning and discussion community to advance this concept. So
your guarantee is that most experiments are going to fail. Like, not everything is gonna grow, but we're gonna learn throughout it. Like the guarantee is the learning.
The guarantee is the learning, and the guarantee is you won't have ever you plan it in a certain way, so you always have something for your table or for your design, but you have a section for experiments to keep ideas flowing.
Keep learning. Well, thanks for everything, Andrew.
Thank you.
It's the beginning, I think, of a long relationship. Talking about plants, I already started bombarding you with photos of my plants.
That's excellent. That's what we want. You guys too.
So I encourage everybody to get to know you more and follow your stuff, because it's very interesting. And I'm very happy myself to be included in the group of early adopters of the gardening tester. So thanks again, and for sure we'll see you many other times at the podcast. I'm sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.